Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 141. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And down in the comment section, let me know, what is your prediction for the New York Jets schedule this year? How many wins? How many losses? Let me know in the comments because that's what we're diving into. It is football season. And as a Jets fan, had to bring on another fellow Jets fan so we could chop it up. And joining me, we have the model maniac, Byron Lindeque. How we doing, Byron?
Good, and you, Derek. Can't complain yet. The season hasn't really begun, but I guess we actually can complain. We'll chat about all of that as we get into it.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be plenty of complaining as the season goes on and in this podcast. But at least with the season not starting yet, we haven't lost yet. So definitely have that going for us. But we're going to dive right into it. I mean, we could start with last year. Obviously, it was a disaster offensively, especially, but 7-10 last year. Probably surprising that they even won 7 games, third in the division, 13th in the conference. Offensively, it was an absolute disaster. 31st in total yards, 30th in passing yards, 22nd in rushing yards. That mainly was just Breece Hall. And then they were 29th in points, 29th in first downs, 30th in turnovers. What is your impression of last year of this team offensively?
My impression of this team is, I sound fine. I moved my mic just a little bit so people could see the shirt. Nathaniel Hackett is a scam artist like no one has ever seen before. The fact that he's riding Aaron Rodgers' tailcoat this hard and for this long, I don't know what he's doing to Rodgers that he's allowed to be here for this long, because he's useless. He's absolutely useless. I think I saw a stat today on 310 targets for Garrett Wilson. He's had 6 inside the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
This is Garrett Wilson, one of the greatest wide receivers in the NFL. He's had 6 targets inside the 5-yard line. And Nathaniel Hackett's largely responsible for all of that.
Yeah, last year he had, I believe it was 169 targets, and inside the 10-yard line, he only had 2. So you even bump it back 5 yards last year, and he had 2 targets. It's just, and you said it. I mean, the fact that this man even has a job in the NFL is strictly because of Aaron Rodgers, because he is absolutely terrible. And you would think after the Denver job, he would have been run out of the league, but Aaron Rodgers said, hey, come with me. So here we are. So
yeah, we are. Dude, I can't, after watching Scott Hansen on NBC's Olympics with the Gold Zone, as a Jets fan, knowing what Nathaniel Hackett did to the word gold zone when he described the red zone as the gold zone and then had easily the worst red zone efficiency in the NFL last year, should just have you again kicked out of the NFL. Not after the Broncos stuff. This would be the nail in the coffin, but I digress.
Yeah, 18 total touchdowns in 17 games is not going to get it done.
Yes. Great.
I mean, the defense was incredible. I mean, there was games they're only giving up 12 points, and it's like, well, we're just going to lose this game still. But defensively, they were good. 3rd in yards allowed, 1st in passing yards allowed. They were 25th in rush yards, so not great against the run. But I also do think a lot of that was teams' game plans coming in were, we only have to score 10 points and we're probably going to win this game. So maybe let's run a vanilla offense and just try and keep the defense on the field as long as possible to tire them out. And if we come away with a field goal, then good, because that's how terrible this offense was. So I do think that plays into it a little bit. But they were 12th in points allowed, 2nd in first downs allowed, and 8th in turnovers. So defensively, it was the complete opposite side of the coin for this team.
Dude, we are so solid on defense, and I feel like even with Hassan Reddick, we can get into that all, but with him not showing up, I think just having the majority of the same guys back for another year of just fluidity and speed, like they often speak about the 2nd and 3rd years of a defense or offense is when you're not having to think about what you're doing, you're just thinking about executing it as best you can, as a second nature. And I think this defense is going to play so fast. If Sauce can have a few more interceptions and not have bricks for hands as one of the best cornerbacks in the league, like the fact that he's got bricks for hands and is the best cornerback in the league just goes to show you how good he is. Imagine he can start catching a few a few footballs because he's now playing golf. So, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely transitioned over to golf quite a bit. That was actually fun to see in the offseason. But yeah, I don't think the swing is going to help him as far as catching balls go. But the rest of this defense, they are pretty good at taking the ball away. I mean, eighth in turnovers last year, so we do like that. And then you said it. I mean, even without Hassan Reddick, the loss of Bryce Huff is going to hurt a little bit. We'll get into all that, but I do think that another year in this system and another year just playing together and being comfortable of knowing guys are going to be where they're supposed to be makes a huge difference. Now, I don't know if they can take a huge leap forward from what they did last year, but regardless, this is definitely going to be the backbone of this team.
Yeah, I don't see it like a leap forward, but I am confident we don't see a ton of regression, like bad regression. I think we could see some guys really step it up in some departments, but that defensive line was so dominant. And, if we can figure out the run game, that'll be really, really nice too this year.
Yeah. And one of the issues last year was penalties. They were the most penalized team, 124 penalties. I believe that was 9 more than any other team. And that falls directly on Robert Saleh. I just, as a head coach, I love the guy as a motivator. I do think he's a very good defensive mind as well, but that definitely has to be cleaned up this year because there were a lot of games where they, despite not being able to score points, were still actually in the game, and just a penalty would keep a drive going, or just absolutely disregard a first down, and you can't continually have that.
Do you have the splits by chance of how the penalties were allotted? I'd imagine a lot of them were on offense.
I
I know
don't
that
have I don't have the exact
I
breakdown.
know
I just have
the offense was up to dumb stuff every now and then. The defense did some really dumb stuff with CJ Mosley. I think lost us a game. Did he? Because he jumped over, went full on
Yep.
non-Troy
Yeah.
Polamalu
Yeah.
on us.
Yep.
Completely butchered that game up, and then I think.
Yeah, and then there was guys getting hits on the quarterback and pushing the quarterback's face into the ground, and that's just an undisciplined team, and that's why I say it falls on Robert Saleh. And offensively, I mean, a lot of it is just when you're
Not good enough.
absolutely pathetic, especially
Yeah.
on the offensive line, and you can't block anybody, you're going to get called for a lot of holding calls.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if we definitely looked into it, a lot of it probably is that, but the defense definitely played their part as well. But last year's in the rearview mirror. So quickly, we can recap what they did statistically. The leaders on offense were Zach Wilson, 2,271 yards, just incredibly impressive there from a quarterback standpoint. Brees Hall, 994 yards. That's another thing with Saleh is he was trying to get him over the 1,000-yard mark and apparently did his math wrong. So that was fun. Just did our wide receiver show. Garrett Wilson, 1,042 yards. I said on the wide receiver show, the fact that in this offense, he still went over 1,000 yards last year might be one of the best accomplishments by a wide receiver last year.
Dude, I think I saw he had like 165 targets or something ridiculous, but he was 4th in total targets, but then I think 8th or 11th in receptions. He just didn't ever have good targets. It was a lot of crap just getting thrown at him all the time. Yep. So I'm all in on his reception props this week. I mean, I keep jumping ahead here. Sorry, but I'm down. I'm very excited for Garrett Wilson's outlook with Rodgers this year.
Yeah, I agree. So defensively, Quincy Williams was the leader in tackles with 95. Bryce Huff, who is no longer with the team, was the sack leader with 10, and Jordan Whitehead with 4 interceptions. But if we dive into 2024, because enough of looking at that disaster, their odds 9.5 wins for the over under. That's at minus 155 on DraftKings. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with odds, basically the way that works is you would have to bet $155 to win 100. So the books are saying that they're going to basically be a 10-win team. I wouldn't be surprised if that number actually does get to 10 soon. They are tied with the Bills at plus 180 to win the AFC East, plus 1,100 to win the AFC, and plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl. So what are your thoughts on just how the books look at it, and do you look at it any differently?
So I did a quick win-loss before we got on the show you, and I got to 12 and 5. So, I can see us losing a few here and there. That's splitting it with Buffalo, that's splitting it with Miami, losing to, San Fran, all the basic stuff that you'd kind of imagine would happen to us. But these are the Jets, and I don't see us winning 7 in a row like I have us. There's no way we go on a 7-win streak. We're the freaking Jets, dude. Even against Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, New England again, we're going to drop the bag somehow, some way, but maybe Rodgers brings us a different kind of confidence and ability to do what we need to do. But I think we're going to be in most games, that's for sure. So the fact that we slated to win that many is exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So key departures this year, Zach Wilson obviously was traded to Denver. Bryce Huff is the big one, signed with the Eagles, got Hassan Reddick from the Eagles, and we all know what's going on there. But Franklin Myers also left. He's definitely a talented defensive end, but I do think that the defensive line is strong enough that the loss of him won't matter too much. And then Dalvin Cook and CJ Uzomah really aren't that big of deals. As far as draft picks go, they got Fashanu from Penn State, offensive lineman. Absolutely love that. I think Malachi Corley could play a role as soon as this year. It's nice that if Mike Williams is there, he won't have to step in immediately. Maybe Gibson is the slot to start, but Corley definitely has some ability. Then in the 4th round, Braylon Allen. Obviously, if anybody watched the first preseason game, we know what he's capable of. Guy is a monster, 235 yards, run a 4.35 40. That is just an absolute beast in the open field. So love him and the fact that he can spell Brees. Then they went Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State, who's also a running back. He's talented as well, but basically a depth piece. And then 2 defensive backs to end the draft. Overall, what do you think about the draft that they had this year?
Yeah, we didn't really have too much firepower, and it didn't really fall to us the way I think Joe Douglas wanted it at the 11th pick there. I think, I think he probably wanted a wide receiver because we are definitely lacking, I think, in that second safe wide receiver role. We do have Mike Williams now, but Malachi isn't going to be that guy right away. I think Douglas is drafting like he's got job security, which he should have. I think he's done a phenomenal job with his team. So a lot of these guys outside of Braylon and maybe Fashanu are not going to be here to start right away. This roster is looking good enough now that we can have these drafts be value picks down the board that don't have to be instant starters. And that's what I'm excited most about with Joe Douglas. We can chat about all the Hassan Reddick off the book stuff there, but so far, Corley, I think, has got incredible traits that you can't teach either. I think what the Jets tend to do with their draft picks is find guys with the intangibles physically that the coaches will coach up, with the skill sets and techniques along with that, which makes those guys into absolute freaks.
Absolutely. And Corley is a talented receiver, and like you said, I mean, he's a football player. He has the instincts to be a ball player. He's a little bit unpolished as far as a route runner, but I think that comes with time. So definitely love that. And I love what you said. Douglas is, if he felt his job was on the line, maybe he's trading future assets and trying to get more picks in this draft. But you could tell he's playing for the future. He's playing for depth, and that's a luxury that they have. So definitely love to see that rather than him pressing.
And we haven't had that, Derek, in a long time, man. These Jets GMs have just been shooting from the hip, trying to we would have signed Hassan Reddick for $10 million more than market already, as an old GM. So a lot of people are giving him shit for, really kind of dropping the bag there, but we can chat about it. He's a sturdy guy, so I wouldn't, challenge him too much.
Well, we might as well just go right into it there, because obviously that is the biggest acquisition for the Jets this year was Hassan Reddick, and they traded for him. He basically said that he was going to sign a contract and now is holding out and requested a trade. Douglas, good for him, dug in and said, we're not trading you. So just Reddick, if you're not familiar with him from the Eagles, at least 11 sacks in 4 straight seasons. He had 16 in 2022. That was second behind only Nick Bosa. In 2023, he had a 22% win rate, which was tied for 7th in the league with Bryce Huff, who the Jets just lost. Then 2022, he was 28%. That was good for second in the league behind Micah Parsons, and 23%, which was good for eighth in the league. So the guy is absolutely a talent. The problem is he's getting up there in age, 30 years old. He's asking for Bosa money, and I just don't think that's on the table. And it just seems like Reddick and his agent basically pumped up Douglas and said, yeah, we want to be Jets and we're willing to sign a contract. And then once they actually got in there, they thought they had a lot more leverage than they actually did.
Yeah. And I think I sent you the DM earlier before the show. Is like, I jumped into a Hassan Reddick trade negotiation podcast. Play Like a Jet is a great, which we can also chat about your favorite Jets podcast, by the way. But I was listening to Scott, and he was just, being really frank and honest and giving the other side of the coin, saying Douglas actually messed us up a little bit by not securing a contract prior to, signing him. And I was 10 minutes in, Derek, and I was like, oh my God, I'm already angry. I can feel this hatred of the last 13 years boiling up inside of me again. And it's sad, I feel like it takes a while and a few more years to kind of potentially become a different team where people don't go to New York to get the bag and just kind of end their career there on a massive contract. I want us to be a team where young stars want to go and chase rings, not the bag, and I thought that's what we were going to be getting from Hassan with joining a defense. I mean, he's gone from, that Eagles defense wasn't amazing last year, and he goes to the Jets defense, which is incredible. Like, why wouldn't you want to just be a part of that? You could have a career year and then get paid bougie bucks, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think even if they just gave him more money just for this year or extended him next year, he still would have a chance at one more contract in his career. And with his talent, he'd probably get it. But so the fact that you're asking at 30 years old for Bosa money is just, you're not being realistic at all. And I don't know what they're thinking. Like I said, I mean, maybe they thought they had a lot more leverage and the Jets were just going to cave and give him whatever he wanted. But clearly, this is a very talented defense. Douglas has said if he wants to sit out, he can sit out. He's getting fined. I think it's $50,000 a day if you hold out. So that money is gonna add up and add up and add up. And fine, you don't want to play. Go ahead, sit out the season. Guess what? You're still under contract with the Jets next year. You think they're going to pay you next year when you're a year older? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I know. I mean, what did we gave up a third or a second conditional third or something like that?
Yeah, it's a third. I believe it comes a second if he plays 67.5% of the snaps.
Okay, so basically a third then, because he's not in the current situation. So yeah, I don't know, dude. Jermaine Johnson, I don't think he realizes how good Jermaine Johnson is. So we just got to figure out who the other guy is going to be, which would be ideally Hassan Reddick. But
And we talk about Douglas potentially dropping the ball. I mean, the fact that you let Huff go and he goes to the Eagles and you could have signed him. I think he's 4 years younger for a lot less than Reddick. I mean, they definitely had to make some promises to him before that trade went through.
You know what the thing is, though, Derek? You rattled off the Jets stats earlier on defense and how vulnerable they were to the run. I think having Huff on the team versus Hassan Reddick, that's what I think Hassan would have brought to the team versus Huff, especially on third down, third and shorts, where they can run on us. Hassan's a much, stronger, run stopper too.
Yeah,
so
I definitely agree with that. That's actually a very good point.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, they did sign Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle from San Francisco. He's a former first-round pick. He's had some injuries, but he is absolutely a solid defensive tackle. He will definitely help in that department. Then, obviously, Tyron Smith, left tackle. That is a huge acquisition, regardless of his age. Also, some injuries in the past, but just solidifies that offensive line with a solid veteran. And then we also have Mike Williams coming off the ACL tear in week 3, but has been activated. So definitely like to see that. It's just a matter of health with him, but definitely adds a needed piece on offense. So I do think the additions were absolutely needed, and they can make an impact literally week 1.
Yes. And their absence will be a massive impact as well if they are not there. But even for like Tyron Smith, having him here with Fashanu in his shadow, which is a ginormous shadow full of impressive pass blocking reps. So he's going to be learning invaluable, priceless stuff from, a GOAT left tackle. Like the guy's incredibly good and will be a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. So we've got all of these old guys on the team, on a very young team as well. Like that's another exciting thing is Douglas has been, since Salah came in, this team was young his first few years. And now they, year 3 guys starting to really step up, Reese and Garrett as well. So looking forward to what this O-line can get up to. Hopefully Fashanu doesn't have to play. Hopefully he does play and just takes the spot of someone that he's just outclassed, because that's what we're trying to get at the 11th pick there. So
Absolutely. And you touched on it too. It is a nice mix. And I think the locker room reflects it. It is a very good culture. You have leaders in there. You have young guys that they mostly seem to get along. And that's a credit to Douglas as well, is he's putting together a culture and not just a roster. I mean, you see Aaron Rodgers decided to take a pay cut, the largest pay cut that anybody's ever taken. And they asked him, why? And he was like, I'm fine. I got plenty of money. Sauce Gardner says, I want to be a Jet for life. Like this isn't just
Jamal Adams.
It's not just a talented team. It's an actual team.
Yes. And that's the hard part about playing hardball with Douglas and Rashawn Reddick is like, do you want that guy on the team at the end? Like, ideally, you don't want to get into these situations because the guys are willing to take 10% less than what they expect to be part of this team. And, that's the sad part about this whole situation.
Yeah. And I do think that Reddick is going to be basically backed into a corner. And at some point, he's going to have to put his tail between his legs because digging in is costing way too much money. And the longer you wait, the older you're getting. So he's going to have to put his tail between his legs and bite the bullet at some point. And I don't think it'll ruffle too many feathers in the locker room because of the culture that we did discuss. And I mean, the guy is ultra talented. So even if anybody's pissed at him after he makes a couple plays, well, welcome to the locker room.
Yes. And which locker would you like? You can have mine if you want.
Yep. So yeah, basically, if we're looking at the outlook of this year, we talked about all the additions and all that, but the biggest thing is Rodgers and where is his health? An older quarterback coming off of an ACL. Now, granted, he had a whole season to recover, so that is absolutely helpful. Where compared to Kirk Cousins is coming off of a little bit later in the season, so you do like that. But another issue is, Rodgers last year in Green Bay, it wasn't incredible. 3,695 yards. That's the lowest in a full season for him since 2010. 26 touchdowns, which also that's not a typical Rodgers number. 12 interceptions that year. That's one less than the most he's ever thrown in his career, which was his first year as a starter. And then 6.8 yards per attempt, also lowest since 2015. Now you can make a lot of excuses for what that was, but we didn't see vintage Rodgers the last time we saw him, and now sitting out an entire season. What are you realistically expecting from a healthy Rodgers?
I don't think Rodgers' physical health is as important as his mental health. I think when he's playing with that chip on his shoulder, he's next level, man. His mind is so strong. I know he says a lot of weird stuff, but it's what makes him so mentally sound. And that final year in Green Bay was all of the receivers they have now for Jordan Love are all second-year receivers. One of them is like a third year, I think. And they're all these rookies, like he had a whole bunch of guys just on the out, like, what are we doing here? He knew he was on the outs. He just didn't have anything to play for. I think coming back, a lot of people underestimating him is great. I want us to be the underdogs, even though we're sitting at a 9.5 total. I think he's made sure that he feels that way, especially for his return. So I think he'll be fine. I think his technique as well, the way he throws the ball his arm is so strong and his flick is so impressive. It doesn't require that much lower body mechanics. I'm just pretending like I'm a quarterback coach now, but versus Kirk Cousins. If you think about Kirk, he has to really step into his throws,
Yep.
whereas Rodgers often throws off his back foot, which to me, I don't know how much your Achilles is playing a role when you're throwing off your back foot versus stepping into it like Kirk. So there's my athletic take on a quarterback's throwing motion. But I'm excited, man. I think he's going to do good things for us, and I'm excited for him to unlock the pieces around him more so than the crap we've had under center the last little while.
Absolutely. And you said it. It's a flick of the wrist for him to fire the ball 60 yards down the field, and that is definitely what you like to see. And he is a very cerebral quarterback. That this offense is, it's partially what Hackett has done and not had success without Rodgers is because they try and basically jam 5 plays into one play where at the line of scrimmage, the quarterback and receiver both have to read what the coverage is, and that determines what the actual play is. And Rodgers is one of the best in the league with that. And I think Garrett Wilson is a very, very cerebral wide receiver, not just a talented wide receiver. So if the two of them can get on the same page, I mean, the sky is the limit there.
And Brees and a very lost Alan Lazard. I think that's going to be one of the most underrated. I was almost looking at comeback player of the year for Alan Lazard because I know I didn't think I could even find a number because it's going to be that large. But he had a horrific year after paying him a lot of money, playing really good with Rodgers in that final year. I just don't think he had the chemistry with the quarterbacks. I saw today on Twitter, Rodgers had an interception because freaking Lazard dropped the catch and it got intercepted again. But I think Rodgers will raise Lazard's baseline. We are paying him far too much money to have him be a non-factor. And I think Rodgers will get his ass into gear. So, having him, especially in the red zone, will be a huge thing.
Yeah, and that's definitely where, Rodgers may not throw for 5,000 yards, and with this defense, you don't need him to. But in the red zone is where he shines. And with Mike Williams, and like you said, even if they're just putting Alan Lazard there, Tyler Conklin is a more than capable tight end. You have the threat of Brees with Garrett Wilson. That is very nice inside the red zone where they should have far more looks than they did last year.
And I think Brees is going to have a ridiculous. I think he could have over 1,000 yards receiving this year. Because he can catch a dump off and take it 70 yards. Just given any situation. So with Garrett, with Mike Williams stretching the fields down the sides, I think Brees is going to get a lot of passes, and I think he's going to be an all-purpose yardage freak this year. I think he's going to be nuts. So we've got some really good guys. It's the third and fourth pieces that we're really missing, and I think maybe Ruckert. He's a great receiver. I've seen him make some really good catches. If he's throwing some big blocks and some big Brees Hall runs as well. So I think getting rid of Ozoma as well gives us a bit more understanding that the coaching staff kind of appreciate Ruckert's ability now. I think his second or third year now. So he's also a potential receiving threat that Rodgers could have behind Conklin if he ever gets injured that could, really unleash some stuff there for us.
They also signed veteran Anthony Ferkser, which he's not too bad either. I mean, not the greatest, but if as far as a replacement value tight end goes, definitely helpful. As far as Brees goes, that is definitely his game. It is, you can use him in the passing game, you can use him in the rushing game. Rodgers hasn't historically over targeted the running back position, but when you have a talent of Brees's nature, you have to design plays to go to him. But not even in the passing game. I think it even helps him more in the rushing game. Just shy of 1,000 yards last year. I could see him well over 1,200 yards this year because you can't stack the box this year. You can't just focus on just him. They double teamed Garrett Wilson and they said Brees Hall's getting the ball. And even with that, look at what he did last year. So when you have two enormously, potentially even top 10, top 15 talents in Brees and Wilson, you can't just focus on one because then the other one will run wild. So it's definitely a nice 1-2 punch, despite the lack of wide receiver depth. I definitely think that alone goes a long way.
Spot on, dude. I got nothing more to say on that.
So, I mean, we touched on it a little bit. How far do you think this team could go? Because I do believe that the division is absolutely in play here. I mean, with Buffalo, that they lost a lot of key pieces on offense. Now, granted, they have Superman in Josh Allen, and he could just put the team on his back. But I think they've taken a step back. Miami has absolutely taken a step back defensively and with their offensive line. Tyreek Hill is a little bit older. We saw him getting banged up quite a bit. Waddle's always banged up. So I think they took a step back, and New England is basically the favorite to be the worst team in the league. So the division's absolutely in play, which obviously puts the playoffs in play. But once you get to the playoffs, what concerns me a little bit is this coaching staff. I think a Super Bowl is a possibility here, but getting to a Super Bowl or even getting to an AFC championship and coaching against Andy Reid, you're going to have to call a pretty good game. And we've seen Saleh, just a little baffled as far as time management goes. And then I don't know, but I do absolutely think a Super Bowl is in play with this roster. That just worries me a little bit about the total upside of it. Am I a little bit too Jet fan on that one?
No, I think you're spot on because we haven't really seen him show us that we can be that team that's fundamentally sound in all departments like these other coaches that make it to these Super Bowls. But at the same time, I think it's so much easier to make good decisions when you have good players and a good team. The decisions you can back a fourth down play much easier because you really trust what Rodgers is going to get up to. Or, I think the time management thing can also, because when you're worrying about your players versus the actual situation, it can mess things up a little bit. But we are the Jets. We have a lot of bad stigma to kind of wash off ourselves. And I think Saleh's done a great job so far of doing that. We can still improve. And he's also, in his third year now? Is this his third year? So yeah. It's his third year coaching. Andy Reid is old as balls, dude. Like these guys, Mike Shanahan's been doing this stuff forever. So I think Saleh's also learning how to be a head coach along with all this stuff, because one thing's for sure, he's an absolute leader of men. The team will always be ready. Whether or not they execute is a different situation, the game plan. But I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think everyone gets behind him. We haven't seen issues. Even with Zach Wilson, he handled that situation really well. That team never, ever fragmented. The defense stood in tough all the time. So I'm a big believer in our leadership. And I think, we just need some forward momentum to kind of really get this team to the next level. We've got 17 games to do that.
Yeah. And you make me feel a little bit better because we already talked about it. I mean, there is a lot of leadership both on defense and offense here. And maybe a lot of it was magnified last year because there were so many close games and just so many nail biters where literally there was such a fine line. Everything had to be so perfect that it just, obviously it can't always go your way. And if you're constantly coming that close in games, it's maybe this year we don't have to rely on that as much. That there's games where they actually win by 10 or 14, and if it's coming down and you have that defense, they can just rely on the leaders on that defense. Or if you're on offense, literally just sit back and let Aaron Rodgers run the offense. So I do think that definitely comes into play a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, imagine trying to make a decision on offense real quick, and then you have to think, okay, which part of the book do I need to go to? Because who is our actual quarterback right now? Like when that's your first decision in the decision tree, you got a problem, like knowing that Rodgers is there. Okay, that's cool. I can handle my job now. So I'm way too optimistic about this. I always am before the season, and this is why I have major trust issues. But Derek, I've been a Jets fan for 13 years. I've also been in the country for 13 years. So if you ever want to know how long I've been here, just take a look at how long the Jets have not made it to the playoffs. And that's my Jets' entire fandom. So for me to just do year 14 with the Darnold jersey just draped over the back shoulder of you, I believe in this team.
So I made a joke the first time we recorded, or we're supposed to record, and I forgot to record it. And I said, things don't rattle us because we're Jet fans. Byron, I've been a Jet fan for 36 years. There is literally nothing on this earth that could break me.
No, dude, that deserves a medal. Like once you've broken through into the 20s and the 30s, those are medals of honor. You wear them with pride and passion,
Yeah. So diving into the schedule, I believe they have 7 standalone games in the first 9 weeks. So we're going to get a ton of opportunities to see them. I love it because as a huge DFS player and gambler, obviously watching the red zone, watching the Sunday ticket, watching everything that's going on, mainly paying attention to the Jets. But I love when they are at standalone games because there is nothing else. It is literally just Jets. So I do love that.
And I think we had some of the highest rated games last year, even with Zach Wilson as the quarterback. Like the Jets are polarizing as heck, dude. And now we're going to hopefully, geez, please just give us Rodgers for like 24 games or 22 games, however many we need him for. But imagine him being the quarterback of the Jets when they were drawing all those eyeballs. And we get a lot of primetime games again this week. And I think having as many as we did last year, even with such a crap team, is great because I think those prepare you for Super Bowl-esque type runs, primetime situations. And our team balled out, man. I was in the airport watching that Kansas City game from last year when Zach went like toe-to-toe with Mahomes. And we really should have won that when Jermaine Johnson got held on that third down.
Yep.
But it's stuff like that we can hang in the tough moments. We just got too hurt down the stretch to kind of keep hanging the way we wanted to. But I'm excited. I think the world's going to see how good we are, and the games could be a little boring with our defense. But as a Jets fan, it's safe. We're always going to be in the hunt with this defense.
Yep. And we get one right off the bat. We have week 1, Monday night, September 9th at San Francisco. So we get a Monday nighter right off the bat. Now, I know you said you went through and you gave them 12 wins, so maybe I'll go through real quick here.
Sure.
I'm going to say it's a loss. Just in San Francisco to open the season. San Francisco obviously went to the Super Bowl last year. Their home opener on a Monday night. I do think that the Jets could potentially pull out that game, but for me, I'll give them one loss. What did you give them with that one?
Yeah, I get them an opening L. I think were the next few teams not as good as they are or as poor as they are, I think I would have given them a few more L's early because I think this team needs a bit of, like I mentioned earlier, some momentum to really get going. But once they get that team chemistry, I mean, we saw last year, Derek, that in the second halves, I'm going to be betting the Jets second halves like blindly especially if they're behind. Just bet the second half money line on them because they are the second half team. So I think, maybe with a better team, we can hang tight, but gave them an L against. They're just a better, more well-oiled machine if Ayuk shows up.
Yeah, I agree, and a lot will probably come down to the health of McCaffrey also because if that calf does end up being a bigger problem, then maybe that offense isn't as formidable, and maybe they can pull out a win, which would be great because I probably have them winning the next 4. I mean, you have Tennessee at Tennessee, but I don't think that team is very talented. So I'm going to say that's a win. New England at home, that should be a win. Denver against who? Bo Nix or maybe Zach Wilson comes back into town. I mean, come on, that's a win. And then they go to London and have
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, Sam Darnold. So I mean, imagine that back-to-back weeks they play Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold.
And that was after opening with Robert Saleh playing his original team he was the defensive coordinator at. So this is revenge season for the Jets. We are taking scalps. Let's go. I'm all for it. I think, like you mentioned there, I've got them going on a 7-run win streak over here after San Fran, which I mentioned earlier in the show. I don't see realistically happening, but if you isolate every single game, potentially, but I don't know. Those next 4 games are, at least the next 3, Denver, New England, and Tennessee, just seem like real good softballs that we're definitely going to mess one up, but at least enter the next stretch 2-2 for sure. Like we're not going to be 3-1. Geez, Lord forbid, because then we in deep trouble.
And then in week 3, that's a Thursday night game against New England at home. So you get 10 days to prepare for Denver, then go to London. So let's say they win those 4 in a row. Then you have a short week coming back from London to play Buffalo at home. So that one, I'm going to give them a loss. So we'll say 2 losses there. Just riding high off of a 4-game winning streak, long trip back from London, maybe a little jet lag, and it could be a potential letdown there. So I'll give Buffalo that one. Then we have Sunday night, week 7 at Pittsburgh. That's going to be an interesting one because I do think Pittsburgh does have a pretty formidable defense, and their offense is okay in Pittsburgh on Sunday night. I'm gonna give them the win there, but I could see that one going either way. What were your thoughts on those 2 games?
Yeah, the Buffalo game, I have a splitting with Buffalo, so I had to give us the W at home. We typically have dominated Josh Allen at home. Like, he has not done well against the Jets at home, at the Jets MetLife Stadium. And then Pittsburgh, I would imagine our 2 defenses are pretty much the exact same, but I would imagine that our offense is better than the Pittsburgh. So I would say that supersedes, Pittsburgh being at home. It's going to be a close one. We always play down or up to our competition, and so does Mike Tomlin. So I think these 2 guys are going to be finding themselves in some gray area, mix up of intensity, but we should beat them. I just think anything can happen, and it is Pittsburgh. They're scrappy, but also I prefer taking Pittsburgh on earlier in the year than later on. They tend to get their stuff together as the year goes on as well.
I agree. Next week 8, we have at New England. Gonna give them another win there. Then Thursday night on Halloween, that's the Texans. That one, I'm gonna lean Texans there. Actually, they're at home on a short week. I'm gonna give them another win. That's so we're at 7 now.
Yeah. I gave them an
All right.
L, but I can see it, especially after hopefully whooping on New England the week before. We got a bunch of guys rested up on a short week. Good momentum, but it is Houston. It's going to be a tough game. But I think our defense is what's the best. When you need 4 good wide receivers to take on the Jets. We've got, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins they're going to be matched up against all 3 of our guys in the back there. Our secondary is nuts. So I can see a W, but I gave us an L. It's a 50-50 game in my opinion.
I think that's what I'm going to do. Is that next they're at Arizona. I think Arizona is going to be very sneaky this year. I think they are going to be a good team, especially offensively. It's in Arizona, but again, coming off of a Thursday night game, that's 10 days to prepare. So I'm going to give them another win there and say 8. But I'm going to say they lose to either Indy or Houston, because week 11 is Sunday night with Indy at home. So I'm going to say they lose that one. And I don't know if they win that one and lose against Houston, but we'll just say one of those 2 games they're definitely losing. So going into the bye week, we have 8 wins, 3 losses. And I think that's absolutely possible.
Yes. I've got 9 wins, 2 losses. So, I think that's fair. It could definitely be 7-4, whatever you want, but I think we're in the ballpark there.
All right. So coming out of the bye, have Seattle at home. Seattle, with Ryan Grubb as their offensive coordinator, I do think is going to be a very formidable offense this year. Defensively, not great. Last year, they really were terrible against the run, so could see Breece Hall running all over them. Now, granted, year to year, defenses can change tremendously in any one metric, but I'm going to give them the win there too. So that's 9. Then week 14, we head to Miami. Going to say that they most likely split with Miami. So that's likely a loss. Then week 15, head to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a good team. Before Trevor Lawrence got banged up last year, they were basically fighting to be the number 1 seed. So if they are healthy, have some time to maybe bring some of those wide receivers along, I think defensively they're all right. I could see that being a loss. So we'll stay at 9 for now. Then they have the Rams. At this point, with how old that team is and how fragile that team is, I don't even know if by December 22nd anybody's even playing on offense for them. So I'm going to say that's a win. So that's 10. What are you thinking for that stretch there?
Yeah, so I got us beating Seattle at home, losing to Miami, beating Jacksonville, losing to LA. I can also, like you mentioned earlier, see the L going to Jacksonville and beating LA instead. So it's a bit of a give and take situation there. And I think also at this point in the season, all those teams are likely losing multiple key pieces at some point. Which one it is, we don't know. I feel like Miami is the team that relies most on their stars. So I kind of don't mind us taking them on so late in the season, because if Tyreek or Waddle is down or Tua, they're done. I think if one of those three guys is done, they're done. So taking them on late is nice. We've hardly ever played against Tua with a full complement, of solid options. So anyway, yeah, it gets a little sketchy down the stretch here.
Yeah, I definitely think the fact that first game is in Miami in December definitely helps Miami. So I'll give them that one. And then finish it out at Buffalo and then Miami at home. So, I said just coming off 4 wins early in the season, maybe Buffalo just kind of just gives them a reality check at home. Despite what you said, obviously they do tend to play Buffalo very well at home, especially with Josh Allen. But I think maybe it flips this year and they split with Buffalo. Maybe Buffalo beats them at home and then they beat Buffalo this week. So I guess that's 11. And then I think they beat Miami. I mean, Miami in cold weather, January 5th. That's so yeah, I have them 12 wins. That's right where you had them, right?
Yeah, it's easy to see that happen. As Jets fans, we know there's an alligator and a sharkagator lurking, some hybrid beast under the murky water of a 12-5 prediction. But it seems normal. I feel like we didn't reach. We gave some losses where it definitely could be a W. And I think if you take away 2 more L's, that still checks out the 10, So again, an injury here or there can really ruin things, but
absolutely. Yeah.
I still like our chances, in a perfect world.
And we could always have the Brett Favre happen, because that was the first thing I said when they got Rodgers last year was, okay, so he's gonna basically play. They're gonna be incredible, possibly even the 1 seed in the AFC, and then in week 17 he's gonna tear his ACL. But we didn't even get that.
We did that in week 1 already. So we are like way ahead of that script. Whatever Favre was going to do after all of that stuff, this is what Rodgers is up to. So I'm optimistic.
We ripped the Band-Aid off week 1 last year.
Yeah,
so
ripped the Band-Aid and the Achilles right off early.
So yeah, I absolutely see 12 wins within the picture. So I guess we can talk about, as Jet fans, obviously I bet on the Jets quite often. Last year, I actually had a very, very good year and then started betting on them in some of those close games and lost a little bit of money on them. But what are you looking at for the season? Are there any props that you like? Do you like the win total? I mean, obviously, if we're saying 12 wins, betting over 9.5, or even if it moves to 10 and you get a little less juice, I kind of like that.
Yeah, what are we seeing? It's minus 125 or so, minus something like that for the
DraftKings has 155, but I am actually in New York, so I don't know if they just juiced that because they know a lot of New Yorkers are gonna bet it.
See, that's the thing, is it's just so juiced. They know they're playing defense. They're playing Jets defense there, and it's not ideal. But I have a bunch of random other bets that I have made on them, and I do have one offensive rookie of the year that's not on the Jets that I do think is going to be a sneaky option this year.
Okay.
Too. So, okay. Do we want to start on offense or defense?
Let's go offense.
Offense. Okay. So, Garrett Wilson to score 15 plus receiving TDs is 16-1. Now, that's a lot. It's almost 1 per game. But this is it's also 16-1, yeah, people. This is it's an outright for golf. This is 16-1. It's not Garrett versus anyone else either. It's Garrett versus a number. I think Garrett's releases, Derek, are ridiculous, man. This guy's got one of the best release games in the NFL. And in the red zone, how do you only targeting him 6 times? What do you say? Like 8, 10 times inside the 10? So with Rodgers there, Rodgers' efficiency inside the red zone is incredible. And I think, just thinking about that catch that Garrett made early in the year when he palmed that the Zach Wilson one against Buffalo for that touchdown by the pylon there. that's like the kind of targets he's getting. I think with Rodgers, he's going to get layups. He's going to find him immediately. That could happen a lot. So Garrett for that's a high probability thing. You can also kind of do 14-1 most regular season touchdowns. I don't think that's likely. There's someone goes nuts, but I like Breece Hall as offensive player of the year at 15-1
I like
because
that.
I think Breece can be all purpose. He could get close to 2,000 yards all purpose as this Jets running back. Especially my issue I do have is that Braylon, whatever his name is, takes away a few goal line carries from him and kind of nullifies that touchdown thing. But the overall yardage, Breece, and the receptions he's going to have, he's going to just be a monster with Rodgers there again. So I just think everyone on this offense has better years, and Breece is incredible, man. I mean, what he did on that offense last year, he started humming, and this is his second year back now after the ACL. So we're looking at an athlete that's about as close to his prime as we can see. So I'm all for that as well from there. And then I have a Garrett as well for over Garrett Wilson, over 90.5 receptions in the year. I think he had 95 last year on 150 receptions or targets.
Yep.
That reception rate is going to be higher and potentially on the same amount of targets. So, I think he matches what he did last year with Rodgers there at minus 125, 91 receptions. I think he's going to be the number one read for Rodgers every single time he tees it up there. So that's kind of on offense for the Jets. What are you kind of looking at?
I do like the Breece Hall call at 16. Now, or if you said 15?
15,
offensive
16,
player?
Yeah.
Okay.
15, yeah.
The Garrett Wilson worries me a little bit. At 16-1, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
But just with Mike Williams there, as you said, Alan Lazard could be used with Breece Hall, with them handing off to Braylon Allen. I think double-digit touchdowns is definitely in play, but I don't know about that number. I don't know if that's attainable. But like I said, at 16-1, absolutely, that's worth doing. But I do like
Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota. Those are the first 4 games. We could see him have multiple touchdowns in those games, potentially.
This is true. This is true.
But it's also 16-1. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you said, what was it? Not 90.5?
90.5 at negative 125. So,
okay,
laying a bit of juice, but I think
I'm definitely going to be betting that because as you said, I see 169 targets. Maybe that comes down a hair, but I do think that they are much more catchable balls than what he had last year. And what do you have? 83 receptions last year. So
2022, he had 83 receptions off 147 targets. And then
so that's what I'm saying.
95 receptions off 168 targets, dude.
Yeah. So I love that one. I think it's well worth laying the juice of minus 125 there. And then I actually wanted to see what he is for most receiving yards. I was looking at it earlier, but I cannot remember what. Okay, what do we got here?
I want to say it's like in the 14-1 range as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, we have 15-1 is the best at FanDuel. So I think I'm probably going to go there because I do think that his touchdowns will absolutely increase. Like I said, I think 10 plus touchdowns is absolutely in play after having no more than I think 4 in his first 2 years. But I do think that with Breece Hall, with Aaron Rodgers, with having Mike Williams on the other side, he's going to not get the double coverage that he had. And if him and Rodgers are on the same page, I mean, this isn't just Devontae Adams. This is a guy that no matter where those targets are, he can turn it into a 60-yard touchdown. So I think I like the 15-1 with the receiving yards a little bit more than I do the touchdowns, just because I think there's some more guys that can take away from the touchdowns, whereas we know he's going to get the volume. We know he's going to get quality targets, and we know he's not going to see the coverage that he did last year. So I think I like that at 15 to 1 for most receiving yards. That's probably where I'm going to go is probably I'm going to join you on the Brees offensive player of the year. I think that's a great number and that's absolutely in play. I'm going to go with the most receiving yards at 15 to 1 and then definitely do the 90 and a half receptions.
Yeah. And again, it's a 15, 16 to 1 bet that you're just finding a narrative essentially for, and those are the fine bets to go with. So I might join you on that one as well because you can lay
Love
them
it.
both.
Now, defensively, I'll be honest, I haven't really looked at anything. What are you looking at for there? Defensive player of the year, maybe?
Yes,
Hassan Reddick?
defensive player of the year. Without Hassan Reddick, it's going to be Jermaine Johnson, 150 to 1. Dude,
okay.
8 sacks last year, and I think he's going to be even crazier this year. And I think with the way the narrative of this team, the game scripts are going to need these teams to pass a bit more on the Jets than they have had. We spoke about this earlier, how they just ran it on us all the time because they could. They just needed to get to 17 points to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
This year, hopefully they have to try and get to the 30s. I know Rodgers plays slowly, but hopefully we're just scoring efficiently, getting into the 28s, the 31-point range there, and forcing these guys to go. And Jermaine Johnson has been a wrecking ball this summer already and was last year too, against teams that were just running the ball nonstop. So without Reddick, he's going to be the number one defensive end on this team. That's going to be just – we haven't had opportunities to just pin our ears back as a defense against these quarterbacks. We haven't scored well enough to really see this defense become a weapon versus a defense, like against the other teams. So give us some offense. And he's 150 to 1. That's to me where you're going to look and find it. I don't know if he's going to have the most sacks in the world, but maybe on this defense, he can also stop the run like crazy and maybe get a few interceptions here and
there. Yeah, I don't hate it. At 150 to 1, like you said, we're talking 15, 16 to 1 with Brees and Garrett Wilson. Those are probably more likely. So that's the difference in the odds there. But you said it, the pass rate against them should absolutely be higher. And then if you are going to bet that, so anybody that wants to tail Byron on that, I would get it in now. Because with Hassan Reddick out, maybe they think that maybe that number goes down even more and you get it closer to 175 if Reddick signs.
I'm assuming the markets
probably won't correct too much.
Reddick plays anyway.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is it's actually a good bet from a standpoint of maybe betting him most sacks also, because if Reddick does play, the offensive line is going to have to key on Reddick, and then you're letting Jermaine Johnson run wild. So if the help is sliding to Reddick, that gives Johnson even more chance to get more sacks. So
there's also a guy called Quinnen Williams on the inside of this interior defensive line that will get the majority of the double teams, even without Reddick there. So I think they're gonna have to decide who they're going to go between JJ and Quinnen, because those two guys on that line is nuts. And Will McDonald, I think on third down as well, is not a terrible option. So, but he won't get enough reps. But I think he's going to be a guy there. And then I've got Quincy Williams for the most regular season tackles and assists.
That was the one I was going to say.
20 to 1. I know CJ Mosley had way more tackles in that middle linebacker role than Quincy did, but Quincy's becoming a next level player right now. And I think we can see him take another step in this, especially with more repetitions on that offense. I think the opposition offense, I think they're going to have to, definitely line us up a bit more and do a few more reps to kind of stick with us. So it gives them way more opportunities to make tackles. So random bet there. And then I had him as well. I had a prop for him as well. Quincy Williams, over 125 tackles and assists. I think he had like 130 last year.
I believe it was 95 tackles, 44 assists. So what is that?
140-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at a minus 125 again there for Quincy to go over, minus 110 to go over 125 tackles and assists.
Yeah, and I think he's a very talented player, and I do expect him to take a step forward this year. And as we said, with all the other pieces you have to focus on this defense, those are definitely in play.
Yeah. So I think he's down. Quinnen's 80-1 to be defensive player of the year as well. I think an interior defensive lineman's tough, to kind of get that. You got to be Aaron Donald or bust,
basically.
kind of
thing.
So, then I have one more that's not on the Jets, but I want to hear any other bets that you have Jets wise.
So, I mean, every year, even when they're terrible, I bet them to win the Super Bowl. So I already do have them at 20-1. Just, I don't need money if they win the Super Bowl. It will be plenty for me. But if after all the tears of joy dry up and I look at my account and go, oh, yeah, I like that too. So I'm definitely doing that one. As I said, I'm going to tell you on the offensive ones, and then I'm doing the over 9.5 wins. I actually already have that. I think it was minus 120 when I placed it. So obviously 155, not great, but I do think if it bumps up to 10, even 10.5, I don't mind it.
Yeah. As a Jets fan, I almost want to just emotionally hedge the under and just like, okay, I can put a price on happiness at this point, but they're going to land up winning 10 and miss the playoffs like they did in 2015 anyway. So I don't know, but I do have one more year. Brian Thomas Jr. on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep.
Offensive rookie of the year, 45-1. So Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, they're all up there off of being the top 3 guys to be drafted. But at points in the draft process, Brian Thomas was like one of the top 4. Like it was that big 4, and Brian Thomas was one of them. Now he goes to Trevor, in an offense that can hum if things go right. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be generational. He's got now Doug Peterson and Evan Ingram there to kind of keep the ship going forward. And I think Brian Thomas is just immediately injected into this offense. He's not getting any rookie treatments. He played every single rep in preseason with the starters. He's crushing cornerbacks in reps in training camp. So 45-1 is almost double, triple, quadruple some of the other rookie wide receivers odds for offensive rookie of the year.
Again, at the odds, I definitely think it's worth a stab. And, we tend to see quarterbacks have a slight advantage if they have a really good year. And Caleb Williams should be good, but you're not betting him at what, plus
125. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, yeah.
No, it's not a coin flip. He's going to win this thing. He could easily flunk his rookie quarterback year.
So I was looking at rookie of the year. I kind of like Jaden Daniels at plus 600. Just, he's going to run a ton. And we could see a similar season to what we saw Cam Newton in his rookie year, where somehow with McLaurin and they have Ertz and Ben Sinnott, and if Dotson can actually be what we thought he was going to be, maybe he throws for 3,500 yards and runs for 750. So I kind of like that at plus 600, but at 45-1, I think it's absolutely worth it to take the shot on Brian Thomas as well. Yeah. Another one potentially is in this market, Keon Coleman at 30-1. I don't think he's anywhere near as talented as Brian Thomas is, but somebody's going to have to catch passes here.
Catch the ball in Buffalo.
And you're catching passes from Josh Allen with literally no other competition. so I kind of do like that as well.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. And it's, if he busts out, he can be the number 1 guy, because Christian Kirk is still, I almost said Chris Kirk over there for Jags.
I do it all the time. Yep.
Shout out Chris Kirk, first round leader today. But Brian Thomas, I think his upside is just through the roof. I've been drafting him so much in best ball, and now after week 1 preseason, he's jumped 10, 15 spots in ADP. It's been ridiculous. So I think people are catching up now on the Brian Thomas hype. This number likely lands up being 30-1 by the time the beginning of the season, maybe.
Absolutely. I could definitely see it. All right. Well, it's time. We're a couple weeks out, and we get to watch Jets football Monday night. So I'm excited, Byron.
I'm always excited. Derek, just over here in my living room a year ago, minus, a few weeks or plus a few weeks, we were sitting in me and my buddy were sitting in Zach Wilson jerseys because we had two. I was like, let's wear. I stopped buying jerseys of the players because it's just I don't have any players on the team anymore
Yeah.
from my
Yep.
jerseys. So
Yep.
we're sitting here in the Zach Wilson jerseys, and the next thing, he's in the game playing for the rest of the game, and I'm like, how has this happened so fast? It's always on Monday nights because we always get the goddamn Monday night games on so we have to wait the longest out of everyone to see our team play.
Yep.
And it ends in disaster half the time. But that was like a, euphoric disaster we had that night. But I'm hoping Rodgers if he just stays healthy, a lot of other stuff can go wrong and we can still be okay. He is the most important part of this. So please just stay healthy, Aaron Rodgers. That's all we
absolutely. And with even just, slightly more competent quarterback play than what we had last year, absolutely, we could definitely have an improved season. And actually, I did a terrible job hosting here because as we got way too excited about Hassan Reddick and everyone that they added, Tyrod Taylor is definitely a legitimate backup as well. So I do think, God forbid, if Rodgers did go down, he's going to be more competent than anything we've had in the past couple of years.
He ain't no Tim Boyle. He ain't no Trevor Siemian. Goddamn, we went back to Trevor Siemian after he snapped his ankle against the Browns that night. I was there for that, by the way. I've seen so many bad injuries on the Jets quarterback side when I've been at these games.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week. Byron, let them know where to find you.
You can find me at the Model Maniac on X. That's where I will be doing all my golf betting stuff, which is typically where we get up to. But I'm going to be doing my show on golf is Back Nine Bets. And I think this year I'm going to be doing weekly Back Nine Jets for the second half of that show and just, make NFL bets and bet on the Jets, whether it's good or bad. Nobody knows our team like we do. And I think we'll find, some gaps in the market, unders, overs on tackles and receivings and receptions and just overall game props. So it'll be a fun time.
Love it. And yeah, you don't even necessarily just have to bet on them. As you said, happiness hedges. And we know the team better than a lot of books. So we might even be able to find an edge the opposite way. So
yeah, exactly. We're going to be very happy or very rich by the end of the season. One of the two, hopefully. So,
all right. Awesome. Thanks, Byron. Appreciate you joining, and let's go Jets.
Thanks, Derek. Awesome time.
So that's going to do it for this week. As always, check out theHelmSports.com. Sign up for the Helm Sports newsletter on Substack. I will be over at themadlabmma.com, obviously UFC picks, but we have a football product over there. Have a great team that's going to be setting everything up for you. MadLab came out with a new value tool, so that will be available. Definitely check that out. All the NFL content is available for your MMA subscription. All my bets are in the Discord over there, so definitely head over there. And then also my articles will be up, breakdowns for Thursday night and cash game articles on yardsperfantasy.com. But that's going to do it for me. As always, thank you for listening. And remember,
just have fun out there.